Yusuke Kitagawa. He's the fourth Phantom Thief you get in Persona 5, while the palace associated with him is the second. He's an artist that grew up under his sensei, Madarame, the palace ruler. Yusuke actually starts off very hostile towards the group, only being introduced to them because of his interest in painting on. He threatens to call the police on them multiple times, and seems to side with his sensei 100%. It's only after Madarame's malicious nature is revealed that Yusuke begins to turn against him. He struggles throughout the palace of doing so, as he was the man that took care of him throughout his whole life. After all, it was he who taught him everything he knows in the world of art. Yusuke owes everything he has to Madarame, yet still makes a decision to turn against him for the greater good. Madarame, compared to all other antagonists of Persona 5, is actually the tamest. He took in pupils under his care, only to later plagiarize their works. It is also found out that he is indirectly responsible for the death of Yusuke's mother. The game usually does this to villains, to reinforce their wickedness for the player. While what Madarame did was truly evil, it's not on the same scale as the other villains. Yusuke is very naive in a lot of ways. He often does taboo or creepy things without realizing it, all in the name of his art. He doesn't seem to understand many societal norms and acts without any filter. When wanting to paint on nude, he does it solely for the purposes of art and suppresses any urges he may have. He often does things without thinking, like spending all of his money on art supplies or random things that catch his interest, things that are aesthetically pleasing to him. But they also show how he's only concerned with his true passion, art. He's a character I tend to look up to, as I'm sure many artists can. During the end of the palace, Fox has to come to terms with his sensei's corrupt ways. He manages to look past the bond and connection he has with Madarame, and is able to pursue his own justice. After Madarame's heart is changed, Yusuke is left to pick up the pieces of his now shattered life. He no longer has a mentor, or even a discernible future for him. In the end, all he has is his craft, and the fabled Sayuri. Yusuke once thought that Madarame was his true inspiration in the art world, but he finds out that it was solely the Sayuri all along. Even with this, Yusuke makes the decision to give the painting away, putting his past behind him, and trying to focus on moving on. It's around this time he starts to lose his confidence in his art, and begins to go in a slump. He has to overcome many things, such as the Stockholm Syndrome with his previous sensei. It's illustrated beautifully that Yusuke can't let go of all that Madarame has done for him later on in the story, which we'll get to. The most unique thing about the Museum Palace is how they deal with the main antagonist. With Madarame specifically, he's built up to be as evil and selfish as the others, but by experiencing Yusuke's confidant story, you can find a different perspective of his character. Yusuke's confidant journey begins with him trying to understand the heart. After the events of his main story arc, he finds himself in an art slump, not being able to create anything of substance. You both decide that going into Mementos will provide him with the inspiration for his next masterpiece. This scene is where we get a first glimpse of Yusuke's view of the world. He manages to find interest in the literal embodiment of distorted desires, but is not able to fully understand it just yet. Yusuke was forced into recognizing and confronting the ugliness and evil side of the world, something which he never considered in his art. He begins to question whether or not true beauty can even exist in such a world, and if he would be able to capture it after living under such distortion. Yusuke gets a rush of inspiration after the trip to Mementos, but as we'll see later on, it proves to be short-lived. Yusuke finds comfort in Joker, knowing that he is willing to accept his eccentricities. It's here where your journey with him begins. Yusuke makes a rough sketch of his next painting, basing it on Mementos. The next level in his confidant progression is about said painting. He makes the piece pictured here, the subject being desire. Yusuke is very proud of his work, but doesn't seem to understand completely what it is he's trying to capture. He adds very little to what he believes it represents, and thinks he understands the heart more already. He also plans on submitting it to a nearby art exhibit, believing just because he has seen a mere glimpse into the public's heart, that he has a better understanding than any other artist. Yusuke is fairly confident in his piece, which is what makes his coming setback all the more devastating. The piece is submitted to the museum, yet no one seems to pay any attention to it. Yusuke believes his artwork stands out above the rest, not realizing that it does so purely for the sake of being different. The guests don't see anything special in it, believing it to be just something passionlessly made by some student. Yusuke disregards their comments as being uneducated and unrefined in the world of art. However, as it turns out, it seems those skilled and knowledge in the art world share the same view. Yusuke eagerly asks the critic for his opinion on the piece, and while he does see the expertise in the brushwork and the technique, he sees nothing in the message and purpose. This aspect of Yusuke's story is what makes his journey all the more believable. Many artists will be able to relate to his struggle at the moment. He worked on something he was proud of and was excited to share, only to be met with little to no recognition and criticism. I'm sure many creatives share similar experiences to this. Another great moment that illustrates another aspect of being a creative. While art is subjective, there are times when something you put out can and will be judged objectively. There are fundamentals in many forms of art, and it is very much possible to make art that is objectively flawed. The man gives good criticism of Yusuke's work, but he is still taken aback. To have something you were so proud of have light shed on its flaws and shortcomings is always hard to digest at first. This is the first and crucial step back in Yusuke's understanding. As tough and frustrating as it is at the time, it's vital in building a strong character. This is Yusuke's first major fall. He feels as if he'll never be able to make anything of substance after this moment, and it takes Joker's calm and reassuring nature to guide him back to the right path. He starts to realize his shortcomings, and begins to view the piece with a new, less biased lens. He realizes that the critic may be right. The line, "I haven't captured desire, desire has captured me," perfectly captures what Yusuke is feeling. Once thought to be out, Yusuke seemingly falls right back into his slump, perhaps even worse than before. He sets his goal on proving himself to the critic, which is another major error he will make. He's gone from wanting to learn about the heart for his own sake, to wanting to prove himself to another. It later leads into the interesting topic of wanting to have your achievements and work recognized and appreciated, without doing said work solely for the recognition. It's in some of the dialogue where you realize how much art truly means to Yusuke. He would never make something for a selfish reason, like money and fame, because art is too important to him. He makes art because it's what he does. It's who he is. I'll do anything to escape this slump. The next scene with him is a bit more lighthearted and humorous, but still does have important meaning if you look closely. It starts with Joker going out to the park with Yusuke. His goal is to sketch a couple together to fully capture the beauty of love, a very important extension of the heart. His subject is a man and a woman rowing together, who he believes are a perfect representation of the passion of love. He gets a bit carried away, demanding that the couple remain still for him to draw. Unfortunately, Yusuke only projected his own ideas onto the two strangers. He believed he saw a perfect representation of romantic, passionate love, but it was all in his head, as the couple turn out to be brother and sister. Yusuke is strong-willed enough to use this slip-up to try and better realize how narrow his perception can be. You can really see the mind of an artist in his dialogue. Romantic and familial love. The two may be nigh indiscernible depending on one's point of view. Moments like these really show how intelligent Yusuke is, both emotionally and artistically, as well as knowledgeable in general. He takes any chance to learn and develop his understanding of life. The next scene is another light-hearted one, with Yusuke going to a church to capture the raw anguish that Christ felt on the cross. This scene, more than anything, shows Yusuke's creativity and his willingness to venture to any source material for his art. He cares not about where or who they come from, seeing as how he has no problem with the idea of drawing a nude Joker. Another flaw in Yusuke's perception is shown in this scene. The pastor comes by to let him know that, while Jesus did indeed suffer greatly, his crucifixion is seen now not as a symbol of anguish, but as a message of resurrection and forgiveness. Yusuke doesn't seem to understand how two seemingly contradictory messages can be conveyed simultaneously. The pastor leaves him with something to think over. Try to consider that the anguish one may feel today will someday bring forth new hope. Yusuke's view on the heart now seems more clouded than ever, and it seems any development he begins to make only leads to more confusion. He can't seem to wrap his head around all the different perspectives of the heart, and begins to wonder if he'll ever be able to capture the truth. It's at the next level in his story where the stubbornness of his slump makes him take extreme measures. He asks for you to accompany him to where he and Madarame used to live. Yusuke believes that he never had any problems with his art when living there, and wants to try going inside to reevaluate himself. Yusuke's passion for art was strongest before learning of Madarame's twisted ways. He believes visiting his childhood home could rekindle his burning passion for art. Once you have the required stats to go inside, you're met with one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking scenes with Yusuke. Yusuke begins to recall memories of living in the house, shedding light on his childhood with his prior sensei. You can tell he still remembers his time there fondly, as his descriptions are all painted in a very nostalgic and positive light. It is here where one of the most important and devastating lines is dropped. Quote, "This is also where we would gather to eat. Sensei is particularly fond of salty food." Sensei, what am I saying? Why do I still treat him as my mentor? How long will I allow him to control my life? This scene is very emotional and really shows the anguish Yusuke holds when it comes to his sensei. It paints a perfect image of Madarame in Yusuke's mind. He still respects his sensei even after knowing who he truly is. It brings up a very emotional topic, whether or not one should forgive those who have wronged them or others, even when they have such fond memories of them. You can't always just remove someone who was once so important to your life. Yusuke then reveals another important part of his development. Before everything in his life came crashing down, he simply painted for the beauty of the world, without ever noticing the darkness that coincides with it. He only ever saw the superficial beauty in his subjects, never once questioning the hidden, dark truth they may hold. It was only after his fall that he felt the need to fight back against the ugliness of the world. He was desperate to display his talent as an artist, to validate his own artistry in his mind. Yusuke felt as if his art skills were now meaningless when his mind was subjected to the cruelty of the world. This need for validation and purpose began to take hold of him until he began to exhibit the same dark desires that Madarame once had. It's a very tough scene, but it's important for his growth as a character. He needed to confront these feelings before he would be able to change, before he could get out of his slump. Yusuke remembers something that Sojiro told him prior, something he stuck with since. Sojiro said that he didn't believe Madarame took him in just for his skill alone. At this point in the game, you're led to believe that Madarame simply took in Yusuke for his artistic skill, only to then use and plagiarize later on. But you'll later start to see another side of him. By going through Yusuke's story, you're also developing your understanding of these characters. No matter what Yusuke does to further his understanding of himself and his past, he still returns to the same theme of the heart. The thing I most like about his story is that with each development, Yusuke is still only barely inching closer to the truth. He learns a lot in these scenes, and yet still doesn't appear to be any closer to understanding the human heart. The beauty in Yusuke's story comes from when you realize that Yusuke doesn't need to understand it, only to understand himself. He chases after something that seems so distant, only to realize more about himself as a person in the process. It's a very beautiful message that I couldn't do justice by attempting to explain, so I'll leave you to think about it for yourself. At first, it would seem that Yusuke is no closer to growing as a character by this scene, but it's here where he first begins to sympathize with his sensei. He still somewhat believes in him, even after knowing about the harsh reality of the situation. At his lowest moment of confusion and uncertainty, he hears someone come in. It's the man from the exhibition, the knowledgeable patron that criticized Yusuke's painting. He seems to know quite a lot about Yusuke, even knowing about the slump that he's caught in. The man reveals himself to be Akio Kawanabe, the director of the Japanese Art Support Foundation. He gives Yusuke an opportunity to come with him, saying, "I've made a living investing in promising young artists like yourself." This mirrors almost exactly what Madarame once did, and it's hard not to see the parallels between the two characters. Yusuke is left to think about the offer, and the next few levels will delve into another very interesting topic among artists. Yusuke's story now begins to shift towards another question of the heart, asking questions about money and how it can affect your art form. Yusuke was never one interested in wealth or fame, and the game even pokes fun at how little money Yusuke has. Again, this is something many artists will have to confront in their lives. To make a living off art, you sometimes have to sacrifice your ideas and creativity to conform to your audience. Most artists will not make much money off their work, if any at all, if they do it only for themselves. Money and fame are one of the first true tests an artist will face. What are you willing to change about your own ideals in order to make a living? There also comes the idea of being a sellout. The way I see it, selling out would mean you would have to forfeit some of your ideals and morals within your art in order to make money or achieve greater fame. Some artists make art equally for money and for the passion of making it. You can sell your skill as an artist for money, and it won't make you any less of an artist. It is a lot more complicated on the surface than it may seem. Many artists will be forced to use their work in order to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. In the case of Yusuke, it's a bit more tricky. He doesn't have any money as is, and doesn't even have a place to stay. What Kawanabe is offering him seems like an answer to most of his problems, but it also seems too good to be true. Yusuke is rightfully distrusting and hesitant, but meets up with him anyway to discuss the offer. You can really see how desperate Yusuke is for a return to form here. Quote, "I must cling onto any semblance of hope I can find in this world." It is also here where you see Yusuke's view of money, with him seeing it merely as a temptation. Kawanabe reveals himself to be connected to an organization that Madarame was once a part of. Yusuke once again struggles with his view of his sensei. He comes to the realization that his struggles with his art now are all because of Madarame. Quote, "It's his fault I can no longer view paintings with a pure heart." While it's true that the reason for Yusuke's suffering and confusion with his own art is at the fault of his sensei, he would never have had his views evolve if it weren't for him. Yusuke can no longer view the world with the same innocence he once had, and he believes it has tainted his art form, although he couldn't be more wrong. It's the one thing that would lead to the most growth for him as a character. Kawanabe tries to cheer Yusuke up in this scene, but he reveals an aspect of his character that is mostly just hinted at: his greed. He immediately tells Yusuke how he will be sold as the tragic, handsome artist. Rather than seeing Yusuke for his artistic skill, like Madarame once had, Kawanabe sees Yusuke as a story that would bring him more money. Despite his turnaround later on, there is still an aura of mystery around Kawanabe. You never really find out his true intentions, just what he tells you. He wants Yusuke to sell his work through his own gallery, also stating that an artist without a sympathetic story would never make it in the art world. Once again, we find Yusuke faced with an artist who seems to hold money and fame to a greater level than the art they create. Yusuke sees right through it and gracefully shuts down his offer. He hasn't lost his true passion for art yet. Money means so little to someone who has this much appreciation for art. Kawanabe disregards Yusuke's passion as him being immature, and claims he is unable to look at objective reality. He tries to dissuade him, but Yusuke is strong in his belief. This was something about his story I really connected with. It makes me respect Yusuke as a character so much more. He holds on strong to his beliefs and throws away opportunity that is tainted with greed and temptation. He knows money and fame will only lead him down a dark path like Madarame. While what Kawanabe said about wealth is also somewhat true, money means nothing to someone whose sole purpose is to create and express beauty. Yusuke stands strong by rejecting his offer, to which Kawanabe backs off. Before leaving, however, he gives Yusuke another opportunity to submit a painting to an upcoming art contest, to give him a final chance to prove himself. He has no reason to try and earn Kawanabe's respect, but now feels the need to prove him wrong. Another great aspect of Yusuke's character is that he never once gets tempted to break his morals of art in order to gain wealth or power. Even with the threat of going hungry, he never even considers the idea. Some self-proclaimed artists can forsake their own passions in order to gain a leg up in the world. This just goes to show how great of an artist Yusuke truly is. Yusuke is not very confident in his work at the moment, and fears he may embarrass himself once again. He has a lot on his mind, and needs somewhere to vent his frustrations. He goes with Joker to meet up with the others back at Cafe LeBlanc, the same place he left the treasured Sayuri. Yusuke is planning on participating in the competition to prove his ability and intense passion for art. He is yet to come up with what it is he'll be painting. The ideas that the team gives him lead back to the concept of beauty. one that Yusuke seemingly lost when exposed to the cruelty of the world. He looks to the Sayuri, wondering why he can't seem to capture the same beauty that is found in the painting. It's here that An offers him a different perspective on the painting, one he had not expected. Yusuke finally comes to another realization, that his heart has been clouded. Before, he painted simply for his desire to paint, but lately he had been doing it for the praise of others. He was following right in his sensei's footsteps. The team gives Yusuke their support and reassures him that it's only human to want things such as praise and acknowledgement, that it's okay to want attention for your passions and skills. Yusuke finally seems to understand the concept of beauty once again, not as something superficial, but rather as something to behold within oneself. He is now one step closer to understanding the heart, all thanks to the support from his team, from his friends. The next level in Yusuke's story is the final development before the climax. He asks for you to accompany him back to Mementos, now with newfound knowledge and experience. Yusuke can finally see the beauty in something as ugly as the desire of man. He finally recognizes the beauty that comes in multiple forms. Yusuke has been pondering on the purpose of his art, still not knowing himself. Yusuke asks Joker what he thinks his mother was thinking when she painted the Sayuri. No matter what you respond with, Yusuke seems to already know the answer. It seems Yusuke's goal was not to paint something simply for capturing beauty, but to one day give the same warmth and comfort to others as did the Sayuri. That painting is the reason Yusuke became an artist and was given hope in life. He wishes to give the same hope to others for his art. Yusuke now knows what his goal for his art will be, the final step in understanding himself. After all this time, Yusuke finally seems to get it. He started with trying to understand the heart, but now fully understands himself as a result. He knows what it is he's trying to create. Now, all that is left is the art contest. The next scene is what made me want to make this video in the first place. In just around 6 minutes, this game managed to touch my heart and remind me of my deep passions in the world of art. Yusuke's character has grown so much, yet he still has so much to learn, but that's okay. The payoff is still deeply satisfying. Yusuke no longer plans on entering solely to win, but instead to expose his perceptions of hope to others. Finally comes the day of the art contest. I'll be showing a lot of the scene and analyzing parts I believe to be the most important to Yusuke's character. It cuts to the end of the contest. Yusuke's painting had managed to win.
I still have much to learn, but I finally painted something that I can be satisfied with. Yes, this is the true heart of humanity. The title is Desire and Hope. What do you think?
He titles his masterpiece Desire and Hope, a clear evolution from his previous attempt.
This light is all of you.
Notice the wording here. I believe the writers purposely made this line open-ended. It's up to your own interpretation of what it is Yusuke means. He could simply be referring to Joker himself, or he could also be referring to all of you being the Phantom Thieves. Or even, it could mean you as a human being, due to the painting's subject matter. The voice work done by Matt Mercer is pure perfection in this scene.
The title lists hope, but in my mind, it's a much more concrete thing. I can't believe I didn't realize that until now.
Yusuke is content, and finally has a new sense of understanding for his art. Kuwanabe sees the painting, and gives Yusuke his much-deserved recognition.
You?
It's a good painting.
Huh?
It's not trying to be eccentric for the sake of being eccentric, like the last time. To think the same painting can change this much. So this is the answer you've come up with.
It is.
Desire and hope. I see. Beauty and ugliness. Humans are creatures that possess both. It seems you understand that.
What are you playing at?
It's revealed here that Kawanabe purposely provoked Yusuke in order to encourage him. Kawanabe has a history with Madarame, with them both being failed artists in their own way.
But why would you do that? What's your objective?
I wanted to do something for you as another person who is free from Madarame's chains. That's all.
Huh?
Madarame held a grudge against me for supposedly stealing his customers from him. To start, I couldn't get anyone to rent me space for exhibits. He caused me no end of hardship.
So that's why.
Yes, the heart of man is painted with desire, even if it's coated entirely in black at times. However, it seems you have the strength to not look away from it, and chose to stand up against it. If only he had your strength.
This speech offers another unique and interesting perspective on Madarame, finally offering the good side of him.
Madarame and I go back a long way. First as classmates, then as teachers at the same art school. He used to have a noble spirit. Said he wanted to aim for the top of the art world one day.
Huh?
But in the end, even the art world has its share of politics. Those who are cunning win. I was shocked when I heard that he took you in. He never liked children, you see.
Oh?
This happened just before we cut all ties from each other. But I got a call from him. He was panicking that nearby clinics were closed and that his kid had a fever.
Sensei. Yeah.
Kawanabe ends up showing the real intent behind his foundation, with the goal of helping misguided artists like Yusuke. He offers him his support one final time. Yusuke gives a beautiful stand about who he is as a person. Yusuke has this to say on his hope. You can take this scene how you want, as I believe there is no definitive answer as to what he meant.
So how about it? Would you like our support? Without the overbearing marketing production, of course.
It's a truly kind offer. Thank you for your generosity. However, I must respectfully decline.
Huh. What makes you say that?
I am not Madarame. I won't be stained by desire. After all, I can see hope. If I am lost, they will extend their hands. If I am wrong, they will chastise me. As long as I have my rays of hope to guide me, I will be fine.
However, I believe it to be another parallel to the Phantom Thieves, to his friends. Yusuke, despite going through so many setbacks and so much trouble, seems to understand the human heart further, in turn, understanding himself.
Ha! Madarame really did have a good eye.
It is a tad wasteful of me to decline. Still, I believe it's for the best. I feel contradictory, but that's the human heart, correct? Interesting. That's exactly what I should be painting.
His future is still uncertain, and it would appear he is in the same boat as when he started out. But in the end, he has his rays of hope to guide him.
It must have been troublesome dealing with me, but for some reason, I knew that you wouldn't abandon me until everything was said and done. Thank you, my friend.